question. So I'm going to ask Dr. Wood a question I started to ask the other panel, which I wouldn't have asked if I'd known this panel was this qualified in the area. One of the biggest concerns of people, one of the biggest reasons why people don't believe that UFOs have extraterrestrial origins is this whole question of the speed of light. I'm going to ask Robert Wood, how old or large do you think the universe is? Well, you're a physicist. You probably thought about these things.
I think the latest estimate is 20 billion years.
Okay. About how large is the Milky Way galaxy, which is just a very tiny little part of the
I think the
universe.
diameter is about 50,000 light years.
It's a 100,000 light years across. Yeah.
It used to be, in the books at that time it was 50, today it's considered to be about 100,000 with the, so if we only went 10, tell me if I'm right about this, if we were only able to send craft at 1/10 the speed of light, if the universe is 15 or 20 billion years old, which I think you've said you think, could a spacecraft go from one end of a 100,000 light year galaxy to the other end of that galaxy in a period of the time of this universe has been in existence, 15,000 different times and go back and forth? In other words, why is the speed of light such a big problem? That's what I'm trying to understand. Well, I'm not trying to say it stops the idea. I'm saying, am I right that a craft could go 15,000 times from one end of the galaxy to the other in the amount of time that's happened? We think in terms of our own time. But I'd just like you to respond to that.
Well, I'd like to answer that in two parts. The first part has to do with the organizational name we are working with, Paradigm Research Group. And the idea of paradigm is that the concepts of science get changed suddenly. Sure. And Newton had a paradigm of F equals ma, and Einstein came along and said, no, that's not quite right. When you go close to the speed of light, you've got different equations. Sure. Sure. And so the old paradigm was overthrown. My thought here is that the current paradigm that we have, that you can't travel faster than the speed of light, it might be overthrown by what Dr. Greer had said earlier. Sure. Namely, there's a difference between inertial mass.
But it wouldn't be true then that if we could go to the speed of light, it wouldn't be just 15,000 times doing that. We could do that 150,000 times. In other words, speed of light isn't really a barrier to interstellar travel, is it?
In my opinion, the speed of light is not a barrier at all.
Okay, that's what I wanted to establish.
Can I comment on this
just
for a moment? Because one of the areas that I don't know how much has been talked about prior to today is the whole area of trans-dimensional physics. So if you're dealing with three-dimensional space or four-dimensional space-time, you have one set of equations. But when you deal with very high voltage systems that cause an alteration in what's called the spin theory, mass, and also inertia, you have another whole set of equations which have not been disclosed yet that then become operative so that you can go from here to the end of our galaxy and back, controlling for time on Earth right now in a matter of perhaps minutes or days.
Okay, and I don't question what you're saying. I'm going to reclaim the time just to say this. I can believe that we do have, wormholes may well be true and so forth. But what I'm trying to say is that the wormhole theories have not been established anywhere near as established as the speed of light and the first relativity theory of Einstein have been established. So what I'm trying to say is we don't have to establish, I'm trying to ask you, we don't necessarily have to establish some of these physics, which may well be true, that could be established into the future, in which there are some interesting indications from even the past that might be happening.
Yes.
So I'd like to,
like to
so
contribute to
so
that,
will you
too.
respond to that, Dr.
Yeah,
Below?
we run a conference on future energy almost every year now. It'll be one in July at the University of Maryland again. We've had David Froning there several times as speaker. He's a professor from the University of Adelaide in Australia, and he particularly has worked on this. He actually has simulations of 1 times the speed of light, 5 times, and so forth. He treats it just like the sound barrier, and he literally has equation comparisons for the speed of sound, speed of light, and so forth. So my emphasis is trying to make it simple, and that is the inertial mass is the key to understanding how this is possible, and the special relativity equations, which I'm very familiar with, only deal with inertial mass. So
If I
once you
could
recognize
reclaim my
what-
time really quickly.
yeah, and
If
so
we
we've got
start
a manipulation
talking about artificial intelligence being involved in the control of certain vehicles as opposed to natural intelligence being in control, couldn't we also overcome some of these barriers that people have been talking about? I mean, we send artificial intelligence today out into space. Is that a possibility?
The advanced extraterrestrial technologies do deal with technologies that cross into the
And I see,
conscious quantum hologram and directed thought.
I gotta be
and this
clear,
is
I hate to cut
amazing.
you off, but
Yeah.
my time has
Yeah.
expired. I can't violate what I'm making everybody else live by. But we will now go to Congresswoman Woolsey.
Okay, the first thing I want to do is thank you all for adding an even deeper level of credibility to this hearing that we've had this week. Thank you very much. The subject of ufology is so out there that we have to, many of us have to just know that because of who you are, what we're doing is what we should be doing. So, but speaking of what we should be doing, my question to each of you to answer in the time we have is, where do you believe that the United States ranks in preparation to meet the global needs for the future? And where will the brilliant students that will become adults like yourselves, only some of them have to be women, come from to meet the numbers we're going to need?
Well, when you asked the question, my immediate reaction was, when you said the United States,
Yeah.
I asked myself, who's really in charge of the answer to your question?
Good question.
And so I think the issue which we're dealing with is a truth embargo issue and this enormous secrecy which controls and dominates our entire process, maybe even including the educational process. But if you talk about the ordinary world that most of us think that we live in, clearly we need to establish the ideas that new ideas as the discoveries, as Stan Friedman said, come from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. So I think we need to emphasize the importance of creativity in developing the next set of equations that we need and may have already been discovered, but we need to make our society better and stronger.
Thank you.
Well, I think we already have everything we need to create a sustainable, poverty-free world. It's already extant, and this is very good news. The very bad news is that there is a ruthless, deep national security state that the people I have worked with have run into that is this massive buzzsaw. And I think that at a certain point, we the people and the Congress and the United Nations and other countries have to come together and say, we've had enough of this nonsense. And I do not think this is going to come from an executive order from the president. I think it's going to come from people stepping forward. And I wish to emphasize that, as I did the other day, that in 1998 we declared these unacknowledged special access projects unconstitutional, a priori illegal. And we encouraged, and we now have over 500 people who have come forward to give us information, documents, and what have you on this. And I think we need to continue to do that. I think we have to say to people who are really not responsive to the people that this is still a world of liberty, and we have to be free to know the truth.
Thank you. Very good.